Migration. It's one of the most powerful forces shaping our world, right? But what actually drives it? Today, we're going to break down all the core concepts, from the really dramatic forces that can push people from their homes to the huge global impacts of their journeys. Let's get right into it.
Just imagine that for a second. You wake up one morning and you're told you have 3 months to leave the only home you've ever known. And look, this isn't some hypothetical story. This is a real historical fact, and it perfectly sets the stage for everything we're going to talk about today. So, we're going to zoom in on this one single event because honestly, it's a perfect case study. It helps us understand the kind of dramatic forces that can drive human migration.
I mean, just look at how fast this all happened. In August of '72, Idi Amin makes his decree. And you have to understand, these weren't people who just showed up. Many of their families had been in Uganda for generations, 100 years even. They were a huge part of the community. But then, bam, a 90-day deadline. They had to abandon everything, their homes, businesses, everything. By November, they were stateless. They had become refugees.
And that leads us right into our first key term for this exam review. A refugee isn't just someone who decides to move. It's someone who has to move. They're fleeing conflict or, like in the Ugandan case, direct persecution. The bottom line is they no longer feel safe in their own home.
So events like this expulsion from Uganda, they really get to the heart of why people migrate. And, geographers have a really simple but powerful way to explain this. It all comes down to push and pull factors.
Okay. This right here, this is the absolute core of migration theory. Push factors are all the negative things that basically shove you out the door. We're talking war, poverty, persecution. Then you have pull factors. Those are the positive things that call out to you from a new place. Things like better jobs, safety, or just opportunity. Every single migration story is some mix of these two forces.
And you can see this theory in action everywhere. The Ugandan expulsion is a classic textbook push factor, political persecution. But for pull factors, think about something like the Indian indentured laborers who moved to Trinidad back in the 1800s. They were being pushed by just awful poverty at home, but they were pulled by the promise of wages on sugar plantations. Now, the reality of that work was brutal, but it was the pull of a potential job that got them there.
And this ties right back into our push-pull model. See, pull factors are usually tied to voluntary migration, someone choosing to move for a better career. But push factors, especially the really extreme ones like war or persecution, they lead to involuntary or forced migration. So the crucial question you always have to ask is, was it a choice or was there no choice at all?
Okay, let's switch gears a bit. To really nail this topic, we've got to get the terminology right. These aren't just fancy words, they're the tools we use to describe these huge human movements. So let's break down the essentials.
So first up, the official definition. Notice the two key parts here. It's got to be a permanent or semi-permanent move. So we're not talking about a vacation. And it has to be across a specified boundary. That could be a town line or, of course, an international border.
All right, here's a super simple trick so you never mix these two up again. An immigrant is coming into a new country. An emigrant is making an exit from their old one. It's the exact same person, just looked at from a different angle. So someone who emigrates from Poland and immigrates to the UK is both at the same time. See? Simple.
And this is how we measure the big picture. If more people are coming in than leaving, you've got positive net migration, and the population goes up. If more are leaving, it's negative. The math is easy, just immigrants minus emigrants.
Now, this one is a really crucial distinction. An asylum seeker is a lot like a refugee because they've also fled persecution. But the key difference here is their legal status. They are waiting for their application for asylum to be legally recognized. Once that application is successful, then they are legally classified as a refugee.
Okay, so we've got the terms down. Now let's talk about the incredible scale of the consequences. Because when people move, they don't just change their own lives, they literally reshape economies and cultures all across the globe.
18 million. What do you think that number is? Well, that's the size of the Indian diaspora, the largest in the entire world. It's a direct result of centuries of migration, both forced and voluntary, that has sent people from the Indian subcontinent to every corner of the planet.
One of the biggest economic impacts of migration comes from something called remittances. This is the money that migrants send back home to their families. And the scale of this is just staggering. Globally, this money adds up to more than all foreign aid combined. And for some countries, it's the absolute backbone of their economy.
And of course, the cultural impact is just profound. This quote, which is talking about Trinidad, captures this idea of a Creole culture perfectly. When migrants from India and West Africa ended up on the same island, their traditions didn't just stay separate. Nope, they blended together, creating something totally new and unique in their food and their music.
Let's circle back to our Ugandan example. When those 55,000 people were expelled, they didn't just scatter randomly to the wind, right? Most of them went to the UK, partly because many had British passports. Others went to nearby Kenya, or back to India. Well, that pattern of settlement has a name. It's called a migration field, the specific places a group moves to from a particular origin.
All right, let's pull all these threads together. We've covered a ton of ground, from a single historical event to these big global theories and their impacts. So let's nail down the key takeaways. So if you're going to remember anything for your exam, make it these three things. First, the why. It's always about the push and pull. Second, the choice. Was it voluntary or was it forced? And three, the impact. It's always economic, cultural, and social. If you can get your head around these 3 points, you've totally mastered the basics.
And just to put all of this into perspective, look at this number, 281 million. That's how many people right now, about 3.6% of the world's population, are living outside their country of origin. This isn't just history, folks. It is a defining feature of our world today.
And that leaves us with one final thought. We've talked about political persecution and economic opportunity as push and pull factors. But what about new forces? Things like climate change or technology? The really critical question is this: what new forces are going to push and pull the next generation, shaping the migration stories of the future?